All right, everyone. Trump has made a new proposal as part of his general healthcare reform proposals to allow Canadian drug imports into U.S. markets. I strongly support this, number one. And number two, seeing mainly the Republicans balk at it just shows me you another reason why I can't be a Republican. Just think of Rick Scott 2 days ago and the GOP's leadership now on this issue. This is fundamentally the reason why the Republicans shoot themselves in the foot. They do stupid shit and they lose elections. Thankfully, they're being led by someone who fundamentally was a Democrat back in the 90s, so maybe he understands political strategy a little bit more. Yeah, the Democrats usually a little bit better at strategy, and the Republicans usually a little bit better at maybe, like, throwing their members under the bus generally. Trump coming out and saying basically in order to lower the price of some drugs, US made or whatever, we're going to allow imports from Canadian markets. Because in Canada, a lot of those drugs made generically, different drug laws there, are a lot cheaper. The idea is that forces the US firm to lower its own prices to compete. It's a fairly straightforward concept. The thing is, U.S. patent law prevents any in-U.S. Internal competitors usually for any medical devices, drugs, and so forth. And so if the pharma company wants to gouge you on the price and jack it way, way up, they can do that, no problem. And so the former drug czar's like, oh no, this is a terrible idea. And the GOP is like, well, we're not sure about it. Exposing U.S. drug manufacturers to Canadian competitors. Let the free market decide. If a pharma company can't sell its product, it'll stop producing the product maybe, or it'll lower the price, or it'll figure something out. Or maybe it'll absorb the hit for the prestige of having a product that's specifically really useful and made in the US, and it'll just try to wait it out or something. That's called the free market. There's nothing wrong with that. I never understood, how can the Republicans say, well, we're conservative and shit like that, but we don't want free trade. Not on pharma. That's because the pharma companies buy and sell their senators and congressmen so much. Apparently they didn't think to buy Trump. They figured he was too expensive and they were just hoping that this wouldn't happen. This is a really good, by the way, partial first step towards healthcare reform. Look, the way that you take care of the healthcare crisis in the U.S. isn't to socialize things. Free healthcare is not free. It's not going to work. It's socialistic bullshit. It's voodoo economics. The way to solve the situation is to make healthcare more affordable so that the existing insurance company sort of structure no longer has a problem compensating for it. If the drug prices, if medical devices, if procedures, if they all become less expensive, then healthcare in general will become more efficient and less expensive. You need more competition to do this. This is a step. It's only one step. We need to allow drug importation from the entire world's market. There should be no protectionism towards U.S. businesses. We need a massive reform of copyright and trademark law with regards to medical devices, medical procedures, everything. We need tort reform to drive down the cost of medical insurance. Like doctors have to carry millions in insurance, malpractice and stuff. They should be somewhat shielded from that. And then get government grants out of medicine as much as possible. Let the free market fix the situation. It'll do it 10 times better. Your healthcare system 60, 70 years ago was fundamentally like that. The amount of government intervention in it was relatively limited. Grants for certain very substantial things in order to create a product that was desperately needed. Like some new sulfa drug or something like that. And it was, hailed, oh my God, we developed penicillin. Oh my God, we figured out how to transplant a kidney or something. Really great stuff. The problem is, government said, wow, a little bit of stimulation of the medical industry. It's working so well. Let's do it more. Let's regulate this and tax that. And let's ban this service. And we're going to ban importation. Yeah, no. That's not the way that a free market functions. It's just that when people blame capitalism for our evil healthcare structure, it's the opposite. It's not capitalism that ruined the healthcare structure. It was fundamentally capitalistic for the first 200 years of our existence, more or less. Recently, government has begun exerting more and more bureaucratic influence over the healthcare industry, over healthcare insurance, Obamacare, the excellent example of that, how wonderful that worked, health insurance, medical device manufacturing, certainly drugs and prescriptions. That more than anything else. Basically like, hey, my company creates a drug. I don't have to worry about any competitors for the rest of the foreseeable future. I'll be long dead. Like, all my patients will be dead too. There's no, and as far as curing disease, like the one thing that we could try to centralize a little bit, they never try to do that. They're just busy treating symptomatically, trying to make new pills for your ills. Dose everybody up to the eyeballs on pills anyway for no reason. It's rather strange. I support this strongly. And the fact that the Republicans would balk at it and maybe stand in the way, you're crazy. This would be massively helpful as well for the over 60 voting demographic. A lot of people, mom and pa, if they're within a couple 100 miles of the Canadian border, a lot of times they're going there to get their prescriptions filled anyway, because it's cost effective. The amount of money and time that they spend doing that, like, well, it'll cost $50 in gas to get over the border. We go to this hospital, we get the prescription filled, we get the generic, but we save $500 on the drug. So they're getting the Canadian drugs anyway. It's just that you have to go across the border to do it. Why don't you just allow them to compete effectively everywhere else? It's not like a drug manufacturer within a couple 100 miles of the Canadian border suddenly goes out of business because elderly people are going up there to get their prescriptions filled. What do you have to worry about? Do you not believe that U.S. drug manufacturers aren't capable of competing on an even keel with Canada? Well, if they're not, then you've got too much bureaucratic regulation. You need to deregulate the healthcare industry. Now, don't you make it cheaper? Then they can compete. Let's be less regulated than Canada is. Let's look for ways to streamline every aspect of the U.S. economy. Privatize whatever you feasibly can, or eliminate regulation altogether and not even... It's like with the drug war. Don't bother legalizing anything. Just take every act off the books that affects it. Abolish the concept of drug scheduling altogether. Problem fucking solved. Now just create a separate program for addiction treatment. Gear it towards that. You'll have a much better culture within 10, 20 years. A lot less addiction, it'll be a lot more efficient, and then all the narcos and shit along the border will dry. All the cartel activity will start to go away. Wouldn't that be a lovely world? Wouldn't it be nice if people could stop fucking beheading each other and throwing bodies over highway overpasses down on the Mexican border? I dream of a world in which people can leave each other alone. So worried about weed. I don't care if someone has a weed plant in their garden. Let them smoke and let them fucking choke themselves with the smoke if they want to. I don't care what other people do. As far as Canadian drug importation, yeah, and having money leave the U.S. because the Canadian drugs will, for a brief interlude, be dominant all over the U.S. economy. Oh my God, everyone will freak out. The answer to that is get government out of the healthcare industry and let them fucking compete. Nobody ever complains. Oh my God, Canada. They got such a horrible healthcare system. It's like, no, the socialists love to laugh about Rand Paul supposedly going to Canada for surgery and stupid shit like that, which is a half-truth. Okay, well then let's deregulate our system because there's some reason that things up there are less expensive, at least as far as that goes. Everything else is still expensive, but the drugs, the generic drug programs are pretty good. We should have generic alternatives for every name brand drug. A lot of people pay for the brand name just because they have this weird conception that it's safer. You could literally have the same factory printing out 2 types of pills of the exact same thing with a different label. There will be people that'll buy the more expensive product just for it having a name on it. Look at Apple users. That's about all. Peace out.